Alright, so recently I did a podcast with my friends talking about FNaF as a whole. If you want to, go ahead and check that out. It's a very chaotic video, but one that I still think was kind of interesting. So what I wanted to do, kind of just jumping right off of that, is rank the FNaF games as a whole. So I've already done not a video, but off screen I did one tier list with some of the different characters and ranking them. Um, if you want to see that, I can do that as well, but I don't know. We'll see about that one. But what I want to do is just go over all the games and kind of just talk about them, especially in a 2023 light and with a lot of recent FNAF news going around. I thought now would be a better time than ever to just take a look at some of the games. I won't be going over any fan games, so I know Pop Goes Arcade is on there, but I will not be ranking it currently just due to the fact that there's still a lot of other fan games out there, and it's probably better to put that still as a fan game. These are games that are specifically going to be in the FNAF canon and nothing else. So, sorry Pop Goes, you're a great fan game, but I'm not going to be ranking you just for this video specifically. Um, but everything else on this list here will be fair game. Um, so yeah, without anything else said, let's just go ahead and get into it. So FNAF 1, I think it currently holds up really well still. As a whole, FNAF 1 is a very well-liked game within the series still. Um, just as a whole, the idea that FNAF 1 would bring is still one that is very unique to this game and this game alone. Like, obviously it's still replicated, like Sister Location was one that definitely replicated this style. We had it in Help Wanted and all that. We kind of saw in Security Breach, but FNAF 1 is the only one that I think did FNAF 1's style the best, which makes a lot of sense. Um, as a whole, it is very unpredictable. Sorry, it's a very unpredictable game. The whole idea behind the AI and how it works, even though there's only 4 characters the entire game, it's still a game that is very, like, it holds up very well. Um, would I call it the best in the series? Probably not. At its core, it's still very basic, but I think it's that simplicity that makes it work really well. The entire story is very self-contained, something that's quite easy to understand. Um, and so as a whole, like, I'm gonna go ahead and probably put it in like a B tier. Actually, no, A tier. We'll put it in A tier. Um, this is one of the only games I actually can scare me sometimes. Very rarely now that I've been playing FNAF games and horror as a whole for quite a while now, but it's still a game that can be scary when like situations happen. Um, and it's one that I find myself coming back to often, just for the simple gameplay, simple story, but still quite engaging overall. Um, so with that said, FNAF 2, it didn't come out much longer after FNAF 1, honestly. This, like, once Scott saw that this was going to be a big hit, he immediately jumped on the bandwagon, got into FNAF 2. Obviously, it's a very different game, gameplay-wise. There's no doors. There's instead 2 vents and a hallway in front of you. There are a lot more characters. This one had, boy, how many does this one have? Like a grand total of like 11 main ones, and then there were honestly like Shadow Freddy, Shadow Bonnie, JJ. So there are other characters as Easter eggs, but there were a lot of characters in this one compared to the 5 technically that FNAF 1 had. There was a pretty big jump there. Um, Golden Freddy was now actually considered a main character, not just like this Easter egg character that would sometimes appear. Gameplay was a lot more frantic, in my opinion. like FNAF 1, when you got to the later nights, it was definitely still pretty intense and frantic, but like at the end of the day, you were kind of doing the same thing anyways, like over and over again. There was this like constant strategy to what you did from the from night 1 all the way to 420 mode. You could use a fairly consistent strategy and work with it. FNAF 2 is not like that. FNAF 2, every night like got pretty different, to the point that by the time you were getting into custom night and you were starting to play like the Golden Freddy mode, what your strategy ended up being was still a strategy, but it was always changing. You always had to like be ready to adapt to what was going on in the given situation. There's a lot more you had to keep tabs on. It was a harder game. For some people, that is something that made it a lot more enjoyable. For some people, it was kind of a turnoff. There's also more lore implications here. We got to kind of learn a lot more about the missing children and figure out that it was a prequel. FNAF definitely began to boom around this era. So I'm putting FNAF 2 personally in an S rank. Like, it's one of the only games you will see probably close to that S rank. But no, just like, it was still very self-contained, but it also did really good at serving as a prequel to the first game. Yeah, wait, there's not much else to say about it besides that. FNAF 3, okay, so this one's kind of just divisive. Some people really dislike this game. I am not one of those people. I personally find this game, while not exactly as fun as what FNAF 1 and 2 offered, it was still a fun game and one that I appreciate as an ending to the original trilogy of the games. The gameplay itself wasn't necessarily enjoyable all the time. Like, especially like night 1 literally had nothing, right? Like, there's literally nothing going on in night 1. You didn't have the tension in night 1 that FNAF 1 and 2 brought. But by the time you hit night 2, there was a sudden, like, massive jump. You had to play the game serious basically the entire time. Which, again, not a bad thing. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. But it was a huge jump, and a very quick jump, that, like, other games didn't really just throw you in the way that FNAF 3 kind of just instantly goes from nothingness to big jump all of a sudden, like you're having Springtrap basically immediately after you, even with the fact that you had a bunch of audio lures. Like, you had 5 audio lures in night 2 and you only had like 2 phantoms. It was still enough to kind of startle you really quickly. Obviously lore also got expanded even further than what FNAF 2 expanded upon, which for some people again was kind of a turn off, the fact that there were more questions laid out than answers at times. But it still had this kind of idea of closure for what the trilogy offered. Personally though, I'm going to be putting it probably like C tier. Nothing insanely crazy, and again, I would rather probably play games like FNAF 1 or 2 over number 3, but I'm not like a huge hater upon it. I still enjoyed the gameplay at the end of the day, even if it wasn't as much as FNAF 2 or FNAF 1 even. I could still appreciate the gameplay, and it was still like scary. There were times like, I think this game's scares isn't from the jump scares or from like immediate startles. It was more from the constant tension of like, where is Springtrap? Are the phantoms going to be coming in? Having to manage your audio errors and all that. That's where the like horror quote unquote aspect came from. But I'm still putting it lower. So with that, FNAF 4. This game, I don't know if I said this specifically on the Hellcast that we made earlier. FNAF 4 is both when the game really peaked or sorry, not the game, the series, when the series really like hit another big peak, and also when shit really hit the fan, and not in the best way. Um, as a gameplay perspective, it's good. I know there was this controversy that like, oh, FNAF is no longer scary, the jump scares are super bad. I disagree with that. I think the idea of actually having to use your audio is a huge deal. It was something that really like it made the game just that much scarier. This idea that you're in like a children's bedroom, really having to use your audio for once. Like you could use your audio then, but it wasn't something that like until later nights became a huge deal. Like FNAF 3 was one that you could definitely be like using your audio quite a bit on. But FNAF 4 is like just by night 1, you had to already be like really listening and understanding that audio was a huge piece of the gameplay, which only made the jump scares even more startling when you're trying to like listen and all of a sudden you just have this scream piercing your ears. It was really startling. Um, this was also, so out of all the FNAFs, this is the first one I ever played because I was a poor boy. I didn't actually get enough money to play any of the games up until I was able to play FNAF 4, and that's when I finally got enough to get it. Actually, I played it on my friend's tablet first, and then I got it on my phone, and was able to play it on my phone, and it was super fun. But yeah, so gameplay-wise, it's really good in my opinion. It still has that like FNAF 4 vibe. Or sorry, not FNAF 4. It has a FNAF 1 vibe with like Bonnie on the left, Chica on the right, Foxy and Freddy doing their own thing that you have to pay attention to more than the other two. But it really ramps that up at the same time. Now, I think where FNAF 4 gets really divisive is in the story. Obviously, this game was really story driven, something that the previous games were kind of doing, but not really. FNAF 4 was incredibly story driven. You had these kind of story bits between every night, and you had like the box, you had a whole bunch of theories sparking just out of this game alone. And that's where things got really divisive. This idea that like there were so many different theories as to what the hell could have been happening. Some things that are still kind of left unexplained from this game. And like some people think that maybe it's just because some things from this game got retconned, others because like there's just no way to explain it. And that's where people got really divisive. The fact that there were just so many questions and very few answers. It wasn't exactly the best move for the fan base. Overall, I'm going to be putting this probably around the A tier, like lower than FNAF 1, but still a good game. I think, though, this is where simplicity was kind of thrown out the window in exchange for complex narrative that tried to keep the fan base around. And for some people, it worked really well. For others, they kind of got turned off by this point, and I don't blame them. So, moving on from FNAF 4, we have FNAF World, a huge departure. There's zero horror in this game. As an RPG, it's kind of like, it's just there. Gameplay-wise, like, it's very addictive. I've probably played through this game 3 or 4 times now. Once without the Halloween update, and then all the other times with the Halloween update. And I will say, like, it's addictive. It's fun, it's cute, the characters in it all are unique. Obviously, some characters are far better, but that's part of the RPG experience, is leveling up characters, making them far better in the long run. And so with that said, gameplay's always fun. I've never really had moments that gameplay wasn't, like, at the very least, just, like, entertaining. honestly, like the part where you're like going for every single character, that part kind of gets crappy because like I've literally seen people go for hours on end without getting the last character because like after you get 90% of the characters, the chances like really plummet. So the chance of getting like Spring Bonnie or Nightmare, those are like the common two, is like Spring Bonnie, Nightmare, sometimes Fredbear too. That's where it gets like kind of repetitive, but it's still entertaining. And at the end of the day, that's just kind of part of the RPG experience. Gameplay was never an issue for me. Uh, there was a little bit of story, but not much. You could play the game without worrying about the story at any point and still have a pleasant experience. Um, the Halloween update just made it better, with like very memorable moments, like the plane game and like Toy Chica's voices and all that. The rainbow, which is still probably one of the most memorable parts of the FNaF world as a whole, and some of the older games. Freddy in Space, which of course got a sequel far later. So FNaF World I'm gonna be putting in like B tier, probably. Yeah, we'll put B tier. Overall, FNaF World is a solid game that you can go back and play on anytime. Okay, sister location. I'm probably gonna be flamed for this a little. I didn't like it. I think the concept of sister location is interesting, but that's about where it ends. So number one, I didn't like Baby. I also didn't like Ballora. In fact, I didn't really like any of the characters besides like Funtime Freddy, because Funtime Freddy was really the only character in the game that was scary. None of the other characters were that scary, to be honest. Like, Baby was completely non-existent up until FNaF or Night 5. Like, literally did not show up until Night 5. Even though she had like this constant presence, she really was just there to be there at the end. I think like her presence as a whole, if you're just running through the game, which I actually recently did prior to this video, like literally less than a week ago, I completely ran through the game, all stars, and she barely has this like motivation to the player. She's kind of just like there to be there, and all of a sudden you're doing what she says. Like, obviously, Night 2, she kind of helps you out a little bit. And then she later comes back in Night 4 and helps you out a little bit. And Night 5, she helps you a little bit, but I think if Baby's presence was completely absent from the game, it wouldn't have affected too much overall. Like, if Baby was replaced with some other character, it wouldn't have affected my experience that much. Besides Night 5. Like, Night 5 would obviously have to be kind of touched up a little bit, but her, like, overall presence is more just in the story implications than in the gameplay. And that, it doesn't ruin it completely for me. I'm not saying it ruins it completely, but it makes it so that she feels more of just a character for the sake of plot more than anything else. And I don't know how to feel too much about that. Even in Custom Night, she does not appear, which is kind of like, what the fuck? So, she's kind of this weird character in Sister Location. She's supposed to be like this main antagonist, or not even main antagonist, just like one of the main characters of Sister Location, and yet she doesn't feel like that in the slightest. Ballora, again, not that scary. She has her moment in Night 2, and that's literally it. Funtime Foxy has his moment in Night 3, and that's it. Like, I don't know. That's kind of why I'm saying, like, Funtime Freddy was the only character to, like, genuinely scare me, because, like, his Night 2 segment was actually kind of intense overall. Instead of just holding W key, like, you actually had to manage him. Same thing with Night 3, when you're repairing him, you actually have to, like, manage what he's doing. something that both Ballora and Funtime Foxy never get. And it just doesn't make them scary compared to like Funtime Freddy's overall presence in the game. It makes Funtime Freddy more of this like main antagonist character, and it's not even really main antagonist at the end of the day. It's like, obviously it's supposed to be like Ennard, but Ennard's presence is really only there overall for night 5, and it just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. I'm personally going to be putting this guy and Sister Location overall in D tier. Somehow for me, it just doesn't work the way that like any of the other games work. It's not scary. There's times that are just straight up not enjoyable. You're just kind of waiting for hand unit to be done talking. I don't know. It was a very mediocre experience compared to some of the previous games. So, with that said, FNaF 6. FNaF 6 came out of fucking nowhere. And it did it in a brilliant way. The unpredictability from FNaF 1 came back with its like salvage minigames and its office parts. Like the unpredictability made it like had that unsettling tension that FNaF 1 and 2 had again, mainly FNaF 1. Only having 4 characters again, but having to like really manage them. So we kind of had like the FNaF 1's unpredictability, you had FNaF 2's like management, and kind of FNaF 3's management too, but I would say more FNaF 2 management than like how FNaF 3 manages things. You had a completely new direction with the like tycoon style part of the game and like the cutesy art and all that. Kind of Helpy always reminded me of like a FNaF World character, to be honest, but he also was kind of an interesting thing. You had the lawsuit segment. Gameplay was definitely balanced way better with the lore. The balance between gameplay and story was really good in this game compared to what we got with like Sister Location, where they were really trying to push story at the cost of gameplay, and like FNaF 4, same thing. Except I think FNaF 4, it was more of like gameplay was really solid with story, with like story being everywhere. Sister Location was story was pushed with gameplay being really mediocre. Pizzeria Simulator was that nice medium ground where gameplay had its moments of attention but boiled underneath, and if you went through all the endings, if you really went to find it, the story was also equally as cool. We had like Henry's ending speech, which is still one of the biggest moments in the series. You had like again the salvage minigames and like having these characters from different pieces of the franchise coming back with like the puppet and William, Baby, all that good stuff. That was definitely a cool moment to like kind of settle in, all the way back to like the lore completionist ending where you like learn about Spring Bonnie more, and like the killings and all that was also kind of interesting. So all these interesting things overall that made, just in general, made it really interesting to experience. I'm definitely going to be putting FNaF 6 like in A tier, just underneath FNaF 2. I like borderline S tier. I think the only thing overall holding it back from that S tier is there was no custom night. Obviously instead we got Ultimate Custom Night, but that's kind of its own separate thing. Having a Pizzeria Simulator Custom Night would have been kind of nice, just overall. One thing I think that does push like FNaF 2 into that S tier is just having that replayability factor. Like Pizzeria Simulator obviously has a lot of replayability, but having to repeat the entire game over and over again just to hit those like replayability endings isn't always enjoyable at times. But it's still like overall pretty replayable. But I would still probably play FNaF 2 over Pizzeria Simulator. So Ultimate Custom Night, this was obviously supposed to kind of be like the quote-unquote custom night for the 6th game, Pizzeria Simulator. But at the end of the day, it really feels like its own experience. Gameplay was obviously front and center. There were like a couple lore things here with like Old Man Consequences and Fredbear and all that, but story definitely took the backseat for this one, just to be kind of a cheesy little custom night thing. 50-20 mode was a huge deal. I'm probably just gonna put Ultimate Custom Night kind of right alongside FNaF World here. Like, not bad, but like it served its purpose, and that's kind of like how I like to when I go about these type of like side things. It served its purpose. It wasn't anything insanely special. It wasn't anything super bad. It was just there. It served its purpose. It did its thing, and it was good. Now obviously, that was where the series was supposed to end. It did not end there. Instead, we got a few more games. So Help Wanted. Hopefully this makes sense to be the best game in the series. So number one, it had FNaF 1 through 3 as a whole. So you have 3 games bundled in a VR setting. You also had dark rooms and like the repairs and events and all that. Dude, this game was just great overall. Everything this game did was super, super fun. So number one, you were getting basically what I would say like 4 to 5 games bundled into one, with a much better atmosphere, because obviously VR kind of enhances everything with that atmosphere. The gameplay, insanely well done. Glitch trap, like the way they continued the saga of FNaF in this game is something that I really wished other FNaF games like the AR and Security Breach would have done, because they nailed it with Help Wanted. Help Wanted, super replayable, super fun, like, and then obviously we had Cursed Dreadbear, which only expanded the replayability and the like story with like now we had Vanny and all that. Super, super good. Just as a whole, super good game. Gameplay was awesome. Story was well done. Really good. The AR game. So it kind of sucks because the AR game was kind of dumped after a while. They eventually just kind of said, this isn't as successful as we want it to be, and they just kind of threw it away. But it was still a pretty decent experience. I think for a mobile game, it was something that you couldn't just like sit back and relax with it, but you could definitely like burn some hours playing it. And there were a lot of factors to it that you could kind of experience, like getting the different suits for the endoskeletons and CPU chips, and just going against all the characters in general. The voice lines some of them had. Obviously a lot of skins started coming out, at the downside of microtransactions. So this game, I'm gonna put like kind of next to FNaF 3 here, because while it was an enjoyable experience, the microtransactions and just kind of the way they just fluffed the game out for the sake of pumping content in there, it was a mobile game. Not much to be said there. Freddy in Space 2. So, Freddy in Space 2, probably not as replayable as, say, like FNaF World or Ultimate Custom Night, but it was still kind of interesting. It was so it was a big charity game, and you had, so I think it was 6 characters in total to end up unlocking. All of them served different purposes and have unique abilities. For a very simplistic game, there were some pretty cool secrets to unlock, but overall there's not much to really say about this game. I'm just going to kind of have it chill in B tier as well. So after that, we have Security Breach Fury's Rage, which was kind of this like filler game with Security Breach not coming out yet. Fury's Rage it was there. I'm gonna put in C tier. Actually, probably like D tier. It wasn't nearly like as like, I don't want to say content driven, but like there just wasn't as much there as like what Freddy in Space 2 had, and like it makes sense. It was just kind of something to throw together real quick, but it's there at most. It's just there. Last but not least, Security Breach. Honestly, so kind of like what happened with FNaF 3 and FNaF 4, Security Breach was really divisive. Mostly for the fact that it was very half-baked. The gameplay was incredibly buggy, the story was completely different from what expectations were and from what was kind of promised between Help Wanted and the AR game. The fact that they had to bring DLC in the form of Ruin just to patch some things up was something that fans weren't entirely like chill with. But I think once things kind of boiled over and we got some bug patches and all that good stuff, it's a game that I can go back and enjoy. And again, replayability was nice. There are some secrets to find. I think one of the key problems though, and the reason why it's just so half-baked, is the story. Bringing back Afton was a horrible decision in my opinion. Having Vanny basically near non-existent was also a really bad decision. Glitch Trap being basically non-existent. Like, things that Help Wanted really pushed and then were just completely thrown off to the side didn't really make sense. And I do hope Ruin fixes this, but in its current state, it's probably just gonna go like right here in A tier. Like, solid A tier game, but that's about it. Just because gameplay is still enjoyable, but it is definitely bogged down by its very half-baked and just mediocre story that could have been a lot better. But yeah, so a bit of a shorter video, but I did want to go over some of these and just kind of rank them around, share my overall opinion coming off of the podcast with FNaF involved, and with FNaF being a huge topic currently between all the things coming out for it. We have Ruin DLC right around the corner, and I might do a video kind of talking about what we'll expect from that. But overall, yeah, I just wanted to make this video kind of off the heels of the original Hellcast, which again I will promote. It's something me and my friends did, and I'm hoping to do more of, because it was really fun. As a first episode, it was definitely interesting. I got to learn more about a podcast, and so going forward I will be probably managing it a little bit better, but overall I will hopefully have more Hellcasts to be made. So hopefully I can make more of those and see you all there. Thanks for watching, and yeah, have a good day.